So that's the way bands that are just starting to break through get their first sort of gigs in Europe. They go out in splitter bands. According to the TCA, splitter bands are outlawed. They're illegal because there is a chapter on the transport of people and there's a chapter on the transport of goods. But there is nothing that covers the transport of people and goods in one vehicle. So effectively, it means that if a band wants to go out there, it can't use a splitter van, it's got to use two vans. Great for the environment, really good. Pushes up all the costs on everything. Our members are telling us that, you know, some of them, maybe 40, 50% of their annual earnings are from going and doing gigs in Europe, but it's all fallen away. They can't afford to do it. They can't afford to take the risk of taking a splitter van out there. It's an absolute disaster. Now, how we cure it, I don't know. We should never have left a single market. Isn't that true? We should never have left a single market. I went to get some petrol this morning, couldn't get me petrol, but there was a lovely sign up outside the garage saying, those of you who voted for Brexit, go to the back of the queue. I want to see more of that. And I want to see this country actually getting up off its feet and saying, we have been sold a pup. That's the truth of it. Where's the 350 million for the health service? Where's all these wonderful things that are going to happen with great trade agreements? It's all a nonsense. And it's going to get worse and worse. And the people who suffer worse are working people. Those are the people who are going to pay the big price on Brexit. So come on, let's all band together. Let's put pressure on the Labour Party to do more to battle against Brexit. Let's get back into Europe. Thank you.
And there, of course, we have a brilliant example of British industry, British talent losing out as a result of the activities of this government. Now, Anna Sawa, here he is, fantastic, marvellous. The leader of the Scottish Labour Party, Anna Sawa.
Conference, I'm proud to speak to you today as a proud Scot, a proud Brit, and a proud European too. And we shouldn't be ashamed about saying that. We're going to hear a lot over the next few months and years about the causes and the impacts of the pandemic. But what we cannot allow our governments to do is to use the pandemic as cover for their failures and the consequences of Brexit. And that's why we've got to call out the failures of this Tory government and the path that they have taken this country on. They have damaged us economically, they have damaged us politically and socially, and they have damaged us culturally as well. And that's why we need to have as close a relationship with Europe as possible. But I also want to caution colleagues as well, that you don't defeat division with more division, and you don't defeat one form of nationalism with another form of nationalism. Scottish independence is not the answer to Brexit. It multiplies the effects of Brexit. So we've got to call it out and challenge it in every step of the way. We will lose out. Scotland trades more with the rest of the UK than the whole of the rest of the world combined. Our partnership with the rest of the UK is much more longer lasting and deeper than the relationship we had with the European Union. And we've seen how complex that breakup was, and breaking up Scotland from the rest of the UK would have an even deeper effect. But what's the challenge for us as a Labour Party? And I think this comes to the heart of this issue for us. We don't defeat division with our own version of division. It's on us, the Labour Party, to make sure the politics of empathy can win again. It's on us, the Labour Party, to make sure the politics of hope can win again. And ultimately, it's on us, the Labour Party, to make sure the politics of unity can win again as well. And that's the challenge we face in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What an honour to have Anna today. And next, very much, got the wonderful friend of mine, Martin Edibor, current chair of the Paving Society.
Hello everyone. I stand here as a proud chair of the Paving Society, an NHS GP, and a proud European. I remember during the EU referendum when Boris Johnson stood in front of the big bright red bus, promising us 350 million for the NHS. All we have today is a shortage of GPs, shortage of nurses, shortage of fuel, shortage of food. We can see clearly that Brexit has been a disaster. And what we all need to do is shout from the rooftops and make it clear that Brexit is not working for Britain. For me, what we need is the closest possible relationship with the European Union. Things are not going to get easier, they're going to get harder. We need to be clear that Boris's Brexit deal is not working. And I'm really heartened to see all of you here today, because despite what we've seen so far, despite the fact that we're no longer in the European Union, I consider myself a European. And what I am happy to see is that we have strong voices in the Labour Movement for Europe and Labour for a European Future, who are standing shoulder to shoulder with all of us in campaigning loudly and proudly that Labour remains internationalist and Labour still cares about Britain's place in Europe. So thank you all for being here today, and I want you to join me and join our panelists in continuing to shout loud and hard for what we all believe in, that is, in Britain being as close as possible to the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martin. And as a fellow chair of a socialist society, you can say how important it is to have all of the grassroots socialist societies involved in this campaign as well. And good luck with your elections that are taking place at the moment. I want to now introduce to you a Member of Parliament who has fought tirelessly with us on this battle, both within the Shadow Cabinet and as a constituency MP, representing one of the greatest cities in the world, Liverpool, and of course a city that voted Remain as well. Please, Maria Eagle.
It's great to see all of you here today. And yes, we put up a fight, and we all fought very hard to the end, and we were defeated. And we can see now, every day, what a disaster Brexit is, because we were defeated. We can see that the lorry driver shortage isn't really a worldwide problem, as I think Grant Shapps said it was. We seem to be having much more of a problem with it than any other European country. We know that there are 100,000 drivers short in this country. We know that 20,000 went back to Europe. The year before last, we know that another 14,000 went back last year. And so we know that us being unwelcoming and the end of the single market and the imposition of extra controls has caused that problem. And our general unhappiness with having people working here who are from abroad has been part of that problem. We have to find a way of talking about how to put things right that doesn't put us straight back into the middle of the referendum arguments, because we will then be characterised by these charlatans and liars who are running the country now as living in the past, Ramonas living in the past, who are against us taking back control and running our own affairs. You can easily see, usually in 3-word sound bites, what they would say. Many people who voted for Brexit, they voted for change. There was something about their lives that they wanted change. They almost didn't care what it was as long as it changed things. They weren't open to the argument that it would change things for the worse. That was Project Fear. And they still believe it, a lot of them, when you talk to them. There's still a lot of, I suppose you'd call it intransigence amongst those, whichever side they voted for. A lot of people who voted Remain are totally convinced, and I agree with them, that it was a total disaster to vote for Brexit. A lot of Brexiters think, well, it would be a total disaster not to have, and we can't go back there. So we've got this big division still in our society, which is being exploited by the charlatans who brought us Brexit who are now in control of not only the Tory party but also the country, we have to find a way of talking about the future and our European future that doesn't just hark back to that. Because those of us who fought in Parliament to stop Brexit, and I voted against Article 50, the triggering of Article 50, I voted against it at every step of the way. And I'm still convinced I was right, although some of my colleagues thought that we could have had some kind of compromise if some of us had not been so intransigent. It just illustrates the point that I'm making. A lot of people don't believe there's an easy way back. We're now out. We can't go back to the deal we had before. We can't go back to have the rebate, to have some of the extra benefits that we had. So, well, I think we have to answer the question. If people ask us, we say we want to go back into the EU, people ask us, we've got to answer the question of what that means and upon what terms. And between now and that argument, we have to find a way of talking about Brexit that unites people about a better future for our country, a realistic future for our country. What's in our national interest in terms of our trade? Is it pretending that we live in the Mid-Atlantic or in the Pacific? Or is it trading with Europe? Because things are actually getting worse. Our government is making our situation with our European neighbours worse. You know, talking franglais, having insulted the French isn't going to do an awful lot for the entente cordiale, is it? And so things are going to get worse before they get better. I'm not the only person who said that. They are. So we have to come up with a way of talking about what saying that we want a common European future actually means. We have to be able to convince people who were not convinced during the referendum campaign and who saw something in what was being said, take back control, get Brexit done, who saw something in that spoke to them in their own lives. And some of them, as has been said, are the ones who are going to be hardest hit, are being hardest hit by the consequences of Brexit. We have to find a better way, a new way of talking to people about what the future, our European future, can be. Because if we don't, we can't even talk. We can't even say the word Brexit. And we don't. We don't blame Brexit because it reminds us of a bad loss. So we've got to find a way of going forward that enables us to talk about these things. And we haven't done it yet.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Maria, on that very note, we're having an event tomorrow evening at 5:30 in the church around the corner on what Labour's Europe policy should be in the next election. So if you'd like to come and hear Hilary Benn and others talking about that, please come along. But we will now go to our next speaker, Paul Nauer from the TUC, Deputy General Secretary.
Well, thanks, Mike. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today to bring greetings and solidarity from the TUC, our 48 unions, 5.5 million members up and down the country, to celebrate our close ties with Europe, economic ties, political ties, cultural ties, labour movement ties as well, and crucially to expose the damage that is being done by the government's Brexit deal, damaging deal that is impacting on our members, working people, their families and communities up and down this country day in, day out. Now, Maria is right. We can't rerun the referendum of 2016. We don't want to rehash the arguments about Remain and Leave, but neither can we stand on the sidelines and just watch the government dismantle decades of social progress and close working with our European partners. So, listen, I've got 3 minutes, I've got 3 points. The first thing is this: it doesn't matter whether you voted Leave or you voted Remain. Everybody can see the damage that this government's Brexit deal is doing to the country. You can call it cack-handed, you can call it ideologically driven. It has having a direct impact on people's livelihoods, the people that I represent, day in, day out. Trade with Europe down 20%. Supply chains in turmoil. The Good Friday Agreement under threat. Staff and skill shortages from heavy goods vehicle drivers through to the people who care for our elderly. We are 1 million miles away from the promised Brexit land of milk and honey that Boris Johnson missold this country. The second point is that we... what was the second point? There was a really important second point. The second point is that Brexit has absolutely revealed this Prime Minister's true colours and political priorities. There was no £350 million for the NHS. Instead, it's low-paid workers who will pay the most, who will be hit hardest of all our NHS and social care. We had a Prime Minister who promised he would not only protect our employment rights, he would enhance and extend our employment rights. Well, 5 years on, we've still got no employment bill. We've still got 0 hours contracts. We've still got public sector workers with real terms pay cuts. That's the reality of Brexit Britain today. And the reality is, whether it comes to Brexit or anything else, the Conservatives never put working people first. The third point is this. I hope we'll have the discussion over the course of the conference that we will have a new relationship and a new agreement with our European partners if we have a Labour government. But we can't just wait for that Labour government to come along and deliver that new agreement. That's why the TUC is working with our sister unions across Europe, with the European TUC, to make sure we have a level playing field on workers' rights so that there's no race to the bottom. To make sure that we've got trade agreements that put working people first, that protect our public services and protect our environment. To make sure that we've got a social future across Europe and in the UK, a new deal for working people. And in the UK, that means that ban on 0 hours contracts. It means outlawing fire and rehire. It means a massive boost to the national minimum wage. And crucially, it also means empowering unions to get out into workplaces and to organise and support working people. So my final point would be this. Yes, we've left the European Union, but we will never turn our back on Europe. We will never turn our back on our sisters and brothers in the European trade union and labour movement. I was brought up in this movement with one simple maximum, which is unity is strength. We are stronger together. Solidarity, comrades.
The trade union movement in its entirety, which of course, thanks to the TUC, is still representing British voices in Brussels. So although we can't be there as MEPs, you are there firm and representing British workers. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Can we... Where's Harry? Can we go to a video? Because somebody said, would they have us back? I don't know who it was. Yeah. We don't generally encourage heckling, but it's a good question. Would they have us back if we ever wanted to rejoin the European family in some way? Well, one of our former colleagues in the European Parliament, Katharina Barley, she is a German member of the European Parliament. She's also half British. She was a minister in the previous SPD government, and of course they're fighting their election today.
Hello from Germany on a very exciting day for us on election day. Thank you so much for all your support. We hope that we will have a good outcome tonight. And many greetings to your event today. We still miss you. We think of you lots. We work well together with the remaining Brits that we still have in the European Union, wherever they are. But we're waiting for you to come back. We will keep a light on. So if you need us, if we can help you, if we can support you in the fight against this quite bizarre government of Boris Johnson, just let us know and we will be there.
It is quite a bizarre government, that is very true. It's a great honour now for me to introduce no stranger to the pro-European movement, someone who has fought again consistently, as of course all our speakers have, and someone who, like everyone, like all of us, is wrestling with this central dilemma. How do we make the pro-European case without simply returning to 2016? Ali, over to you. Ali McGovern.
I know I'm the Shadow Sports Minister said, but it was a long time since I did any wrestling. Anyway, hello Brighton. Are you all okay? Wasn't that a lovely message from Katharina there? That was great. I obviously went to the same Merseyside School of Public Speaking as Paul Novak, as I also have 3 points. But, you know, I want to say that people have said, you know, we're not supposed to talk about Brexit or Europe. Well, never mind not talking about it. I want to talk about what we're going to do. We need a little less talking and a bit more doing. And there are 3 reasons that I consider to be overwhelming that we need action. And I want to ask for your help, everybody in the room today, because the situation as it is not good enough. And I'm going to begin my first point by reading to you from quite a lengthy document. It's not a 12,000 word essay, don't worry. It begins. Points will be awarded for the people who know what it is. It begins. We, the participants in the multi-party negotiation, believe that the agreement we have negotiated offers a truly historic opportunity for a new beginning. Anyone know what it is yet? Good Friday Agreement. And I want to remind everybody in the room what we promised. Pending the devolution of powers to a new Northern Ireland Assembly, the British government will pursue broad policies for sustained economic growth and stability in Northern Ireland, and for promoting social inclusion, including in particular community development and the advancement of women in public life. Sustained economic development, stability. Anybody think we're delivering? Right. No, I think that's probably another meeting. But look, what's going on at the moment with the hard border down the Irish Sea is not good enough. It's not good enough. It's not what we promised, and it's got to be changed. So if there were no other reason to continue to work hard to develop our relationship with the people of the European Union, the Good Friday Agreement and the maintenance of it would be enough reason, if that were the only one. But the fact is it's not the only reason. And you've already heard from Horace and from Paul that working people's lives are dependent on us doing more and going further and working harder. I've already said that when it comes to the position of, it is about musicians, but look, it's not just people who, like Horace, go to Europe and play brilliant music. It's about all kinds of people who are creative and who need to be able to work in Europe. It's about giving them a better chance and a better shot, because our economy is not doing well enough. And you know what the fastest growing bit of the economy was before the pandemic? Creative industries. We excel at this as a country, and at the moment there are rocks in our road. So I know that everybody in this room will work together alongside Horace and Paul and I to make this better, and frankly all the members of Parliament who are here who want to see this improved, because we cannot leave it there. And I just want to say my final and third point, which is about what we really have to do and why we really have to take action to improve the situation and to make better our relationship with people in Europe. And that's because we really must stay true to who we are. And in the end, whether you're a pro-European like me, or you just believe in the principle of cooperation in the world, or whether you think that actually the interests of our country and our patriotism and our pride in being British demands us to have a better relationship with people who are just 19 miles away over the channel. You know, this is about who we are, not conflict and division, but cooperation for its own sake and for the interests of the people we are supposed to serve. For that reason, we need action, not words. Thank you.
It's always good to hear from you. You not only communicate great ideas, you communicate them very well, so thank you for that. Right, we've had a Scottish perspective, so we'll now come to a Welsh perspective. We've got the brilliant Carwyn Jones, who was First Minister of Wales from 2009 to 2018. Carwyn.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, I hate being at an age where I can't just not see my notes, but I can't quite see the mic. Let's look at the bright side. We're living in Brexit land, a land of plenty, a land where countries queue up to do trade deals with us, where £350 million a week goes into the NHS, where there are plenty of people fill jobs. Yeah, there are some people who still believe that. And let's look at the reality. Food shortages, fuel shortages, a shortage of drivers, a shortage of pickers, a threat to the British Union itself. Support for independence in Wales has never been higher. It's a long way from a majority, but taking back control works in many different ways. And of course, the threat, the Good Friday Agreement that has kept the peace in Northern Ireland for so long. All these things being ripped up by reckless Brexiteers. We see families divided. My kids wave their Irish passports in my face. A gift of their Belfast-born mother. I've looked for Irish descendants and Irish ancestors rather, and the furthest I get is the beach in Aberystwyth. But it shows that even families are being divided as a result of Brexit. And what's Boris Johnson's response? The front page of the Daily Express yesterday, I don't read it that often, but I saw it, said this: Boris loses patience. He's in charge. You have to admire a man who has the self-awareness to lose patience with himself. And what is their answer? Forget about the large market. We have a land border with in Ireland that's barely 20 miles across the English Channel. Look for the US. And what happened this week? The US said, no, we don't want to trade deal with you. And besides, replacing the European market that's just across the water with a market that's smaller, 3,000 miles away, is not a substitute. Now, I don't know if they taught geography in the schools that they went to, but they certainly didn't teach maths either. But the question's been asked, what can we do? What can we do as a party? Well, we have to accept it's a long road back. We have to convince leavers. We have to convince leavers, and they're still out there, that they need to change their minds. How do we do that? We look at things like we joining the single market, we joining the customs union, looking perhaps at EFTA, looking to build the bridges that the Tories have burned. Looking to build a future of common prosperity and trade deals, relationships with Europe that are based on common prosperity and not on nationalism, which is what we have at the moment. A Labour government that in future joins all those governments that are being formed across Europe now. Governments of the centre-left in the Nordic countries, in Spain, in Portugal, in Germany today, we hope. And of course, I forgot this, I'd be in trouble, Wales. We've had a Labour government for the past 20 years. We shouldn't shy away from saying to those people who voted leave, we understand your perspective, but look what's happened now. The promises you were made, you were given, have not been kept. And that's why we need a Labour government elected in Britain to put an end to Boris's botched Brexit Britain. Thank you.
We most definitely need a Labour government because, of course, none of this would be possible without one. We've heard from our brilliant members of Parliament. We've heard from the former First Minister for Wales. We've heard from the leader of the Scottish Labour Party. There is a crucial element, of course, as well in Labour representation where we can and are making a difference in local government. This is a particular council that still flies the European flag, I believe, because, of course, we're still in the Council of Europe. Steve Cowan, leader of Hammersmith and Fulham Council.
Friends, and I say that convinced we are friends. I'm not just convinced on the nature of our friendship, I'm convinced that we share every single value about our place in Europe. But there is a problem with that, because we had to convince those people who look at us as different, as not friends. And we have to do it at a time when we have a Prime Minister who is like one of those old-fashioned spibs you would get in the Ealing comedies. But unlike the comeuppance they get at the end of those films, this one is currently getting away with it. How is it that it's somehow patriotic to wrap yourself in the Union Jack and argue that we become smaller as a country and less influential? We wouldn't leave NATO, we wouldn't leave the Commonwealth. Why have we left the European Union? And the simple answer is a bunch of hard-right, free-market capitalists have hoodwinked the British public. Now that's no way. But when you look at the British public, and I'm proud to be British, all of us are united in the things we care about. We we care about the future of our children, the world they're going to grow up in, whether it's finding jobs and work, cleaning the environment, living in strong, safe communities which work with vibrant high streets. Or if we look about the British public, they care about their communities. They care about the jobs on their doorsteps. They care about the places they hang out. And all of us in Britain care about Britain. So I think as we begin to recognise the dire situation that we're in, we have to resolve to make some changes. I think we have to resolve to convince the country to get back in the European Union. And it is a long path, maybe a very long path. We have to start, I know my own family is doing this. We are in the process of twinning with every single country in the European Union. We're going to send our children to Europe. We're going to have exchanges, cultural exchanges, work exchanges, scientific exchanges. Chances for us to get used to working together as communities. Let's rebuild this argument from the grassroots up. Local government can be fundamental to that, but it doesn't have to just be local government. It's a chance for us to go out and say to our fellow Britons, if we really care about our children, we want to ask the future, what's the vision we're offering? And I think the vision of a strong Britain, engaged in the world, influential in shaping what happens, working out the new economy as automation offers new insecurities, working out how we tackle climate change, and coming together with the founding principles of the European Union, which never again shall we ever fight in conflict, but we shall work as colleagues, shaping the future together. That's the mission for this generation at this time in this country. Let's start again and take those European ideals and win the argument. Thank you very much.
Great to see you. Right, next up we've got the brilliant MP from Leeds North West, I think it is, Alex Sobel, powerfully pro-European and member of Local Labour.
Thank you, Mike. As well as those things, I'm the Shadow Minister for Tourism and Heritage. And before I talk about some of the devastation that Brexit has reaped in my group, I just want to say, I was with you every step of the way, from the day they announced that we were going to have this referendum, right through all those parliamentary sessions, trying to mitigate it, trying to gain the position to where we're trying to get another vote on Europe. Every step of the way I was with you, and all of us in this room fought that battle collectively, and there are new battles to fight. The battle isn't over, the battle is just beginning. It's a battle for our children's futures and the future of our continent. And we are still a part of the continent of Europe, however much Boris Johnson might hate to say it. And the other thing I'll say is in those battles, particularly those battles before the referendum, all the things that we said would come to pass are now coming to pass. The food is missing from the shelves in the shops. The petrol stations are having fuel shortages. Chefs are missing from the restaurants. All of those things we talked about, we were told were scaremongering. We were told that none of it would happen. And it's all happening one by one by one. I just want to say a few things that are happening in my group, things that might not immediately come to mind. So on Friday, I met with educational travel operators who are Unite members. And working class kids from this country and working class kids from Europe would go on exchanges and on visits using group passports and ID cards. That is no longer possible for Brexit. That's hundreds of thousands, millions actually, talking about bilateral visits of children every year that won't get to experience those countries. Language learning will be stunted by Brexit. We've got, going slightly higher up, we've got the ending of Erasmus+. We've got the ending of that whole scheme where we were able to send young people and we were a net importer actually. This was great for the UK economy because European students would come here, many more than would go to Europe, and would be spending money in our universities, in our shops, in residential accommodation, and in my constituency, noise is a big issue, and they were not the noisy ones, so I particularly like them to come. So, and the new scheme the so-called Turing scheme, you know, it's flat. There is no intelligence, whether artificial or otherwise, behind the Turing program. So we've got to try and to build back. When I go and see heritage sites, so I was with English Heritage or Historic England, and I say, well, what are your problems? Say we cannot get either materials because they've got to come from Europe. This Italian marble that we need, we cannot replace it with other marble. You know, it has to be like the original, and we've got a lack of construction workers because they've gone home. You talk to hospitality, they don't have the workers. You talk to a whole range of people, and there are all of these issues one by one by one. And so we need to be making those arguments publicly. When people see there's a problem, it's my responsibility in the press and the media and on social media and all the rest of it to say, this is due to the terrible Brexit deal that rushed through without any need. And then people start dawning on them that it's a bad deal. And then we can start talking about what a good deal, best deal is. And that's how we can win this battle. And I don't think it's a job for this year or the next 2 or 3 years. This is a long-term project. We've got to be in it for the long term. And we actually need to repair, I'm afraid to say, some of our broken relationships with our European Union colleagues. Next week I'm going to Brussels, I'm going to meet some of them. It is not going to be easy for us. They are not well disposed to the United Kingdom. It's important for us, the Party European Socialists, to utilise those contacts and to work with European politicians so they see that they have allies in the UK, not just enemies. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. That's a really, really crucial message to hear. Our country is at a crossroads, and we know that this government isn't working. Brexit isn't working. And one of those advocates who has been tireless in fighting this cause in her seat, that she won from the Liberal Democrats, which was a previous Liberal Democrat stronghold, but we are flying the pro-European Labour flag in Hornsey and Wood Green, Catherine West MP.
Thank you very much, Seb, and to Mike, who has been keeping the whole conversation going, be it on Zoom, and thank you to all of you who have joined sessions, whether you are based in Europe, whether you are based here in the UK, and we do have a huge day today with the German election, and also those of us who are worried about the far right, the French election next April, wanting to see what is going to be the future of Europe, because in a way I think we've had a taste of how difficult it is to win those arguments. I also briefly wanted to say a huge thank you to Anna Turley. I don't know if she's in the audience today. Can everyone just give a round of applause to Anna? Anna chaired the European movement for a long time and was a real, had us very much in our heart, and we were in hers as well, although through those difficult moments. I briefly wanted to talk about 2 years ago when we were here with the queue snaking all the way round to the other, almost to the next beach along. And we had our hopes dashed in the general election in 2019. But I think that story is very much a story which is happening in other places as well. The infiltration of very right-wing ideas, and I think a sense that we were, at certain points in the journey, far too complacent, that everybody thought like us. And I think, as many have said today, we have to look for those glimmers of hope. Hope number one, when we got together 2 years ago, who was in the White House? Mr. Trump. And now we have to join together with President Biden, who says things like, the future for the US is in good union jobs. And as Paul said earlier, from the TUC point of view, this is the way that we build back, by winning the argument, whether it's on agricultural workers, whether it's on students. And by the way, come tomorrow evening to the Migrants for Labour Fringe, which is being run by a wonderful new Labour councillor in Cambridge, and some other fantastic new European representatives who have won elections just in the last little while by becoming part of the Labour movement here in the UK. This is how we will build from where we are now to where we need to be, by listening, as Maria has said. We're not there yet, we're listening. But also my boss, Lisa Nandy, because I'm in the shadow FCDO team has said, Europe is our anchor. We are anchored in Europe, but it's with joining together with the vision which the Democrats have in the US, who have won an election. It wasn't easy, but where did they start? It was in the grassroots. It was in workplaces. And that is our challenge, to go back to the grassroots, to understand what it is within the NHS. How do we win those arguments? Hearing about nurses in the NHS voting for the Tories. This is what happened in the 2019 general election. We have to change that. We have to be in workplaces, schools, public sector, on farms. And that's what's exciting about what's happening in the east of England, getting into talking about the living wage and all the things which we know will make people join up again to a progressive vision for Europe. We know that we are intertwined with Europe, inseparable, and our success depends on Europe's success. So join together, be with us, be on this journey with us, come and get involved, tell us what you think. Now that you can come back into Parliament, come back in, help us to win the argument through trade union movement, through the friendships that we have in our CLPs, and importantly through supporting Labour's movement for Europe so we can build back towards that hopeful future. Thank you.
Always a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you for all the work that you're doing to maintain our relationships in Europe. It's so good. Right, next up, we've got a wonderful friend of mine, Marina Princeless, is a lecturer at the University of East Anglia, and she's, I think, our sole European voice on the panel.
Hi, everybody. I was coming back here from Greece, and while I was in Greece, we are talking here all the time about Brexit. So I was talking to people, and they were saying, so are they in now? Or are they out? What did they do? It was a bit stupid, wasn't it? So people, not the political class, is not really sure, at least in Greece, of what happened here. Neither am I. But I know one thing. I've heard a lot of people talking about the shortages, the economic output, about the economy and what will be the effect of Brexit. But you know what? If somebody would tell me I would have a Labour government and a socialist society in the future, but I will have to eat one potato that it will cost £5, and that's it, I will take it. And we have to understand that. We have to understand what Brexit promised. It was sovereignty, it was something that it will be the remedy for all their problems. It was a scam, of course. We all know that. But what I'm trying to say is that as a Labour Party, we have to go beyond this economic output. We have to promise something more. Not that we only have money and a lot of deal in the supermarkets, but a different vision of society. A society will be equal, a society which will give all of us justice. Now, the question is, how are we going to do that? And like other speakers said, we have to go back to the grassroots. It's not only about joining the EU, it's about going to the grassroots and bringing the different groups of civil society together. It's about community organizing, that we didn't do as much as we should all these years that we have been campaigning. This is how we fight all these dark ages that the Tories are bringing on us. Well, it's actually here. So, back to the roots. As I was coming from Greece, I went to Berlin. And Berlin was fighting, I'm saying that because of Catherine, the far right and the fascists. How did they do that? They brought together 22 civil society organizations in Berlin, from the church to every little group, to fight the fascists and stand against the fascists in Berlin. This is what I think we have to do. So it's not only about the institutions, and let's be fair, I mean, I'm Greek, you probably have heard me talk about this. It's not that the EU is without any faults. And the fault there was that national interests were still a big part of the EU. And this is a big problem that we have to recognize. So we don't have to be only internationalists with our own national interest and collaborate on that. We have to be transnationalist. We have to bring the movement, the same movement on the ground that we have in Greece, in France, in Germany, and in Britain. Effectively, what I'm saying, it's not only about joining again the EU, but becoming something much, much bigger. Not only as a Labour Party, but as what we are. We are a Labour movement. Thank you.
It is, of course, not just about potatoes and jerry cans. It is about identity. It is about who we are. It is about what we believe. And I want to introduce now a speaker who is no stranger, again, to the pro-European movement, who is fighting this fight not just on the airwaves, but from the red velvet benches of the House of Lords, and now as chair of the European movement, Lord Andrew Adonis.
There's one person in the world who's worse named than myself, and it's James Cleverly. And he tweeted up yesterday, there are no fuel shortages. Now, friends, what planet do these people live on? There are no fuel shortages, there are no shortages in the shops. Musicians apparently can travel freely. There's no threat to the Good Friday Agreement. The union is supposed to be safe. They are completely detached from reality. And what we need to be doing is campaigning day in, day out on the things that really matter to the public, which are rooted in Brexit. Now let's say that word, because the Voldemort of British politics at the moment, which dare not speak its name, is Brexit. Let's say it, Brexit. What is it that's causing the shortages in the shops and the shortage of HGV drivers fundamentally? Brexit. What is it that's threatening Northern Ireland and an open border and the Good Friday Agreement? Brexit. What is it that's fundamentally threatening the union with Scotland and the union with Wales? Brexit. Why can all these musicians not travel freely in their splitter vans? I've never heard of them, but they can't travel in those across Europe. And ply an honest trade, which is one of the foremost industries of this country. Brexit. That's what's going on, and that's what we've got to campaign on. Now, of course, we've got to look to the future, and of course, we've got to be realistic. I chair the European movement, cross-party. We should be in favour of electoral reform, in favour of a progressive alliance. We need to make the sum more than the parts if we're going to get this Tory government out. And we also need to be realistic about how we do it. Step by step towards rejoin should be our strategy. We campaign on the musicians. We campaign on Erasmus. We campaign on the shortage of HGV drivers. We force the government, issue by issue in Parliament, to change their policy on these things. We force them to eat their words, and bit by bit, we can then come back again. And what should our policy at the next election be? With the Liberal Democrats, with the Greens, with all other people of goodwill, it is very, very straightforward. Rejoin the customs union and rejoin the single market. Let's get back approximately to it. This isn't some kind of great impossible thing. It's roughly the situation that Norway and Switzerland had. Switzerland had a second referendum 6 months ago on staying in the single market and maintaining freedom of movement, having narrowly carried a referendum against 7 years ago, huge majority in favour of staying. So it's step by step towards rejoin. And just one final point, never give up the faith. This is the darkness before dawn. Our destiny is to be European. Our destiny is to be European because it's our continent, because it's our values, because we lead. The only thing that is stopping us from being able, step by step, towards rejoining is an absence of imagination and an absence of real passion in campaigning. The future is not yet written. Let's make that future Labour, let's make it European, and let's go for it.
Right, next up we've got a brilliant MP with us, Bambos Charalambos. Bambos is an MP in London and he is Shadow Minister for Immigration.
Thank you very much. It's a hard act to follow down with brilliant speakers, so I'll do my best and I'll keep it relatively brief because obviously you've had lots of speakers today. It's funny that we find ourselves in a cinema today because obviously the Tories promised us Dolce Vita. Instead we've got Apocalypse Now. And since that the Bond film that's being released this week is called No Time to Die, and that has to be something that we need to be clear about, because we need to campaign hard. We need to make sure that the things, the shortages that we're experiencing now are that the chickens come home to roost, or not coming home to roost because not being sort of driven by the lorry drivers. But in my brief, I have the highly skilled workers visa. I've had lots of meetings with employers. They're telling me about the madness of who's listed in the highly skilled workers visa scheme. Roofers are highly skilled workers, but scaffolders are not. Bricklayers are, but hod carriers are not. And the list goes on and on. It is idiocy. They have not thought it through at all. But we need to make sure that the dots are joined and that the message gets through to people who voted for Brexit, who are now realising that it isn't the promised land that was suggested by the Tories. I took my car for an MOT, basically my 16-year-old Ford Focus passed. But the mechanic said to me, got difficulty getting parts. I voted for Brexit. I didn't realise that this would be the outcome of Brexit. It wasn't explained to me properly. And I think once people understand the impact of Brexit, what it means to them, how it's going to impact upon them, that message will get through. And that gives us every chance of winning the next election. But we need to be clear about our message. And we need to be clear that this is a monumental act of self-harm. And this will make us worse. It will make things more expensive. It will make us poorer long term. So we need to make sure that the Tories have an 8-seat majority. We need to work hard, winning the argument in those seats that we lost, and we need to gain more seats in order to do that, because without winning a majority in the Commons, we can't do anything. We'll be stuck with this road to disaster. So I'm quite optimistic. I think things will get worse before they get better, but I know with colleagues around here and friends in the Labour movement of Europe that we can do it. So with your support, I know we can win. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. Today we're here to put courage into the hearts of our comrades in the party to argue for a European future. And of course, the rest of this week is about ensuring we have that Labour future, because without a Labour government, none of this will be possible. And narratives are important, and so is journalism. And one person who has been steadfast in explaining the truths of Brexit has been Polly Toynbee, who I am very, very honoured now to introduce to you.
Thank you very much. Here we are. This is Project Fear. In some ways, perhaps it looks going to be worse than Project Fear said it would be. We all still feel the hurt and the heartache of that referendum, of the way it has split the country, the way it has reframed politics in the most divisive way possible. And I think we all still feel that deeply in our bones. On January 1st, there wasn't a bang. It was the kind of long, slow moan of effects. It wasn't perhaps as dramatic as everybody thought it might be. Labour people were told that Labour was suffering from its own project fear. We're told not to talk about Brexit. Just don't mention it. It's too complicated for us. Get Brexit done was a brilliant slogan, and it worked because people wanted to shut up about it. A lot of people just said, let's never hear about it again, let's get it out of the way. The process of getting it through Parliament is excruciating. And so it would be better for Labour not to mention it. Well, I think right now is the moment that has changed. The whole game has changed. I don't think Labour need fear it anymore. I don't think they become Brexit deniers by just pointing out the obvious that all of you have been saying this evening of what's happening all around us right now. You know, events have changed. I don't think it's a question of saying voters got it wrong. I don't think you need to offend voters in that way. All it takes is to blast Boris Johnson's shockingly bad Brexit. It isn't what people voted for, it isn't what people asked to vote for. I think that when you look at how unprepared they've been, they had 5 years to get ready for what was plainly going to happen. You know, HGV's early part, I've been writing about HGV shortage for quite a few years now, the filth and squalor of their lives on the road.
the lack of any truck stops, the appalling pay, dreadful conditions. No surprise people want people retiring and getting out of it. They haven't prepared for the ports or vets. The arts and music, which you've heard about, has been scandalous. That could have been dealt with very easily within the deal. The fishermen's leaders this week complaining in the FT bitterly that they've been sold out. Taxpayers are actually subsidising them, and they feel that they've been bitterly cheated. Red tape, we were told, red tape of Europe. That was one of the big reasons why we should leave. Well, the red tape has turned out to be 10 times worse in terms of the numbers of forms that have to be filled for any kind of import and export. The Royal Medicines Agency, the madness in terms of red tape, setting up our own kite marks so that manufacturers have to register twice, and they've delayed it for a bit, that's what's going to happen, just as a matter of nationalism, just as a matter of putting our stamp on our own procedures, which will end up being exactly the same as Europe if we wish to trade with them at all. Sham trade deals, Liz Truss's shocking trade deals, just rollovers. There will never be a US trade deal. We always knew that. There is no way that we could be compatible with their agricultural standards. Our voters wouldn't tolerate the lowering of standards that would be necessary. It's not going to happen. Biden doesn't want it to happen either. Now, it's said that Boris wants the next election to be about Brexit. He thinks he can rerun it. Well, he can't go back in time. It won't work. Brexit will be a Labour-winning issue next time. Not a question of telling people they were wrong, but thinking that overnight we're somehow going to go back into Europe, but simply being able to point out what a disaster it's been, and to make it absolutely clear that Labour will make much better deals, lots of them on every front. Yes, I hope we end up with Norway, Switzerland, and maybe eventually back into Europe again. We don't need to talk about that now. It's now safe to talk about Boris's dreadful deal and how it's going to be fixed. So let's hope Labour gives up the sort of omerta on Brexit and starts getting brave.
Always wonderful to hear from wonderful Polly Toynbee. Next up, we've got one of my favourite people, John Liss. Where are you? John is a powerful media voice on this, consistent, often amusing, and present over there. So, John, if you'd like to join us.
Thank you very much. Often amusing is the best backhanded compliment. Ladies and gentlemen, if I had a tenner for every time I asked the Labour leadership to get real about Brexit, I'd be able to send £350 million a week to the NHS. Here's the thing. We do need to talk about Brexit. Brexit's here, Brexit's happening, and Brexit is horrible. Right now, we have a government so afraid that it cannot even acknowledge its own policy, and an opposition that's letting them get away with it. A credible opposition party cannot follow the government's narrative when that narrative is this false and this damaging. Labour needs to stop fearing the government and to stop fearing the electorate. All around us we see shortages in food, fuel, medical supplies, political chaos in Northern Ireland, the collapse of the fishing industry in so many different parts of the country, and many other industries too. Any doctor will tell you that you cannot cure a condition until you have diagnosed it. The party doesn't need to fight the battles of the past. It doesn't need to blame voters for choosing Brexit. It doesn't need to name call. It simply needs to hold the government to account and to differentiate itself. This is about holding the government responsible for the government's choices. The choice to increase bureaucracy and to make life harder for people. The choice to make goods more scarce and expensive. The choice to separate and isolate us from our neighbours, economically, but also politically and socially as well. Of course, Brexit is a stick with which to beat the government, because the government's handling has been so diabolical. But this still casts the EU as a battleground and a political tool, and it's much bigger than that. It's about our values and also our future. We must accompany a precise attack on the government for what it's done with an open, positive prospectus for what comes next. All of us in our hearts want to rejoin, but that's not a project for the next few years, it's about a generation. Right now, we need to focus on freeing up the trade that keeps this country moving and advocating for the rights of people to live and work here, to make this country their home. This isn't about an immigration policy that privileges Europeans. It's about celebrating the mutual value of freedom of movement and extending the benefits of immigration to many other people around the world as well. In short, it's about rejoining the single market at the very least. This is not just about being honest about the facts and true to our values, it's also good politics. When things go wrong, and they're seen to go wrong, Labour needs to show that it warned about it, that it saw it coming, and importantly, that it knows what to do about it. As a party and a country, we need a positive, open, inclusive vision. A vision which does not cast the EU as an anti-British obstruction, but as a strategic partner and friend. Something that places EU citizens not as instruments or a necessary evil, as they are seen now in the HGV shortage, but as people who built their homes here and who deserve our solidarity and respect. In the end, this is about the country we want to be and the world we want to engage with. Our past is European. Our party is European. Our future is also European. Now is the time to do something about it. Thank you.
Please, you recovered from the Tesco incident. You need to follow him on Twitter, you'll know what I'm talking about. I am really honoured now to introduce Hilary Benn, who has done a fantastic job as the chair of the committee that is now disbanded, of course, because Brexit's all done and there are no issues related to Brexit. But I'm sure Hilary is going to disabuse us of that notion. Thank you, Hilary, for everything you've done.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Let's just say it. Brexit is a mess. Now, one by one, all of the promises, they keep echoing in my head. There are no downsides to Brexit, only upsides. Do you remember that one? One of the easiest trade deals in history. I'm sure Boris Johnson was thinking about that when Joe Biden said, well, they won't be having a trade deal with you in the future. We remember that too. And Boris Johnson himself asserted that there will be, of course, no non-tariff barriers with Europe. And the truth is that bit by bit, the British people can see what is happening in front of their eyes. And we've heard from all of the excellent speakers already about the queues, and we've heard about the shortages. I'm not sure anyone's mentioned Marks and Spencer's, because of course Marks and Spencer's has announced the closure of 11 stores in France. Successful British export. People, the French, like to buy their M&S sandwiches just like we do, but they can't get them there in time anymore because of the biggest single increase in cost, bureaucracy and delay that the government has dumped on British businesses. I was at a factory yesterday in my constituency and I asked about trying to get their goods across Europe, and there was a rolling of eyes of the people who've had to find ways to deal with it, and the threat to the peace and security that a Labour government achieved after many years with the Northern Ireland Protocol. And the other people who actually don't want to talk about Brexit are the Tories. Think about it, they don't. Is this because of Brexit? No, it's not because of Brexit, it's COVID. No. There's a global shortage of lorry drivers. Can someone point me to the queues for petrol in France and Germany and Italy? We don't want to put lorry drivers on the shortage list because we think lorry drivers deserve a pay rise. Now, I agree, lorry drivers deserve a pay rise, but I thought I'd look at the shortage occupation list the day before yesterday. And I found among many jobs, ballerinas. Now, comrades, do not ballerinas deserve a pay rise? In which case, why are they on the shortage occupation list? And believe you me, the excuses get more fanciful, it's the weather, and it won't be long before David Frost gets up in the House of Lords, and when he's criticised for what he's doing in Northern Ireland, he'll say, "My lords, I'm sorry, the dog ate my protocol." And that is only a matter of time. And the truth is, as we see the problems that Brexit is creating for the British economy, for British people, for jobs, investments in our future, we have to start the process of building a new, closer economic relationship. That is what we have to do, bit by bit, step by step. And our job is to support the businesses who are telling the truth about what this means, to get behind the musicians who are apoplectic with rage that their opportunity to perform freely across Europe is being threatened by what the Tories themselves have done. We need a rational outcome to what's happening in Northern Ireland at the moment. By the way, we can't be the people who say, implement all the checks. We cannot be the people who get on the wrong side of the debate in Northern Ireland. Because the truth about the protocol is it said the degree of checks will depend on whether the goods are at risk of entering the Republic of Ireland. Now, nobody has yet been able to tell me that a lorry load of goods bound for Sainsbury's in Belfast is at risk of entering the European Union. Can anyone point to the way in which actually the grace periods we've had in place now for, 9 months, have in a single instance undermined the integrity of the single market? There aren't any examples. So we need common sense, rather than the ideology which has bedeviled the Brexit debate. And we need to build that new relationship. We need a veterinary agreement. We need a deal for musicians. And these should be our demands, one by one, step by step. The final point I want to make is about sovereignty. I am all in favour of sovereignty, I believe it. But the thing about sovereignty is, what do you do? Now, if I were to take you, Andrew, as my example, that's the trouble with sitting in the front row, you get picked on by the speaker. I can make you sovereign, Andrew. There's probably a side room here. We'll take you in, we'll shut the door, we'll lock it, and we'll leave you in there, and inside that room you are completely sovereign. Nobody can tell you what to do. You're not subject to the rules of the European Court of Justice. You don't have to worry about the Commission. You don't have to worry about Boris Johnson. You can do whatever you like. The slight teeny problem with that is, where does it get you? Where does it get you? The answer is it gets you nowhere. And if we think about the great challenges that the world faces at the moment, climate change, dealing with threats to peace and security, improving the lives of other people, because if people can't grow up and live a decent life where they were born, they will do what human beings have done since the dawn of time, which is to move in search of a better life. Now, how do we achieve any of those things? We do it by working with others. We may have left the European Union, but our European friends and neighbours are still our friends and neighbours. And it makes sense in the interests of the people that we represent today and the people we seek to represent in the future. Because without a Labour government, none of this is going to happen. It makes enormous sense to say we need to build a new relationship with those friends and partners across the Channel. And that should be the message that we take to the British people at the next election. Thank you.
Now, amongst the many things that make me sad about Brexit and watching it unfold, is the fact that we no longer have MEPs. We no longer have Labour MEPs in Brussels working to make lives better for us in Britain and indeed for people across the whole of Europe. And of course, so is one of those wonderful people, and another one in the room is the wonderful Claire Moody, who is our last speaker today. Thank you so much for joining us, Claire.
Thank you very much. And then the embarrassing moment as I changed the microphone level from following Hillary. It's really good to see all of you here today, and that you have stayed here, you have listened to speakers for an hour and a half, that you are still so committed to our cause for Britain's future with, alongside, and we all hope part of the European Union. And I want to say two things. First of all, I want you to cast your minds back and remember, Britain has been better than this. Right now, we're looking at shortages. We are looking at queuing for petrol. We are looking at empty shelves in the supermarkets. Do not lose the sense of shock that that is what our country is facing right now. And remember what we were like. Remember what we were like under a Labour government that committed to being in the heart of Europe. Remember all that investment in the NHS. We didn't need 350 million on the side of a bus then, because actually we hadn't had Tory austerity, we had Labour investment and Labour engagement in the European Union. But now we are where we are. And one other memory I want you to cast your minds back, it's sure as hell is burned in my memory, but to the night of the referendum. We've talked a lot about Wales and about Scotland, and rightly about Northern Ireland. But when I was an MEP, I had the privilege not only to represent the southwest of England, but also to represent Gibraltar. And Gibraltar, right now, the negotiations are still going on about what happens to Gibraltar. And they are going to be facing horrendous difficulties. And on the night of the referendum, the people of Gibraltar, their result was first, and they voted 96% Remain. God knows I wish the rest of the country had done that. But that's also, and it's also about what this country is like now in terms of what it's like for us living here, but also how we are now perceived in the rest of the world. If you look around the world, if you talk to people from other countries, you talk to our fellow Europeans and how they now see Britain, we are not looking good. But it doesn't stop with the EU 27 countries. If you look across the globe, much loved country in the world is now a laughingstock. People are mystified. They're utterly mystified. They're mystified about the choice we made in 2016. We had the best deal as a member state in the European Union. We had the best terms of any country, and we were at the centre of the European Union. But beyond that, people are mystified. They're looking at us and thinking, what happened to that pragmatic nation? And they still see our fabulous British citizens involved in the UN, involved in the OECD, involved in bodies across doing brilliant work in international development. And they look at those citizens, those British people, and they go, yeah, that's the Britain we thought we knew and loved. And then they see Boris Johnson at the UN. And apart from anything loose, a lot of them are going, who's Kermit? But that cannot be. That cannot be the future of this country. Britain is so much better than this. And we, as a Labour Party, it is on us to lead our country out of this dire situation, to give hope back to this country, that we will be better than this again, and to recognise our geographic reality, our economic reality, but also the heart and soul of our party and of many people, and all of you in this room, lies with the European Union. Thank you very much.
That was wonderful. And thank you again to all of our amazing speakers. And thank you to you for coming, because without you it would have been far less interesting, one thing. But also, the last thing I want to say is, we are important people. There are lots of pro-Europeans in this country. There's there's Cambridge for Europe, there's Leeds for Europe, there's Scotland for Europe, there's loads of different things. And those people are our allies, and we should work with those people and love those people and do what we can to, to help them in what they're doing in their local areas, in terms of the engagement they're doing. But we know there is only one organisation in this country that can make any of this better. And it isn't the European movement, wonderful as that is. It isn't Labour for European Future or LME either. It's the Labour Party. There's one alternative government in this country, and that is the Labour Party, and that's why we are in this party. Regardless of Brexit, we want a Labour government, and we want to see that government happen after the next election with Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner, who are doing a great job, and the rest of the Shadow Cabinet. And that's who we are, and that's what we will work for. But we also know that we want that Labour government to rebuild our relationship with Europe, and only Labour can. And it's up to us, therefore, to do that. It's up to us to encourage other pro-Europeans who are not currently involved in the Labour Party to get involved with our party and see more Labour MPs elected. So, final thing from me to say is we've got an event tomorrow, 5:30, again with Hilary Benn on what our Europe policy should be at the next election. Do join us if you can, that's around the corner at St Paul's Church. And if you haven't yet, please do join us, Labour for European Future and LME. Sign up to our mailing lists and come to our events on Zoom, and hopefully in the real world, fingers crossed as things develop. Thanks again for coming today, and over to Seb.
Thank you to all of you, and that message really is the most important one to take from here. Go out, have your meetings with your CLP delegates, with your representatives, with your members of parliament, with your PPCs, not been chosen yet, but you know what I mean, with your councillors, with all the activists, and spread the word that Labour is, of course, a pro-European party, and that our only future is as a European party. We have a short video message from a certain someone, and the Odeon has been very, very generous with us and letting us go slightly over time on this. Thank you very much. Please, play away.
If you're anything like I am, then you haven't been arguing the anti-Brexit case nearly as passionately recently as you used to do. And I think that's fair enough. It's partly because of COVID and partly because people were genuinely fed up with talking about Brexit. But I think there's been a sea change. I think Johnson's chickens are coming home to roost. There's less and less food on the supermarket shelves. Anyone who's got anything to do with catering, the hospitality industries, and lots of other industries knows that it's really impossible to find enough people to run them. And anything to do with border crossings is a nightmare. We know why that is. It's time for us to start arguing once again the pro-European vision that we have for the future. Let's do it.
Someone has to say, he has a cunning plan, we have a cunning plan. Let's get out there to win. Let's be proud British people, let's be proud Europeans, let's be proud of our party and win this thing. Thank you.